YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage coming to you from the Warhammer version of the Grassy Barflands, which is known as the Crossroads. Basically, every game has had a flat map in it. They had them back in Rome 1, and I think in Medieval 2. And I think they had to bring it back in Empire. Like, it wasn't there at first, and then was added, and it was quite ugly. And I think they've done a lot to try and at least make these maps look more visually appealing, even though they're relatively flat and provide very balanced gameplay for multiplayer. This one we're going to have Hayden's phone here. He's operating as Tyrion. Tyrion's definitely a much tankier lord after many patches. I mean, he's always been a little bit of a tank, but he can do quite a bit of healing at the end of his life. Has the Sunfang ability, which can do some nice breath damage, and then does really good armor-piercing damage and has a lot of armor. Going to be supported by a High Mage. The High Mage has the Fiery Convocation, which is kind of a breath spell. That can do really good damage along the line, albeit it's very expensive in terms of winds of magic. And then Tempest, which is great at controlling flying units. You have the Starwood Staff here to get some extra replenishment, and they do have access to Soul Quench, which is a magic missile, and Apotheosis, which does some healing. As far as most of the High Elf army, there's going to be 4 units of Rangers, and they're going to be backed up by the Talons of Torquelada, which is an archer with light armor firing flaming ammunition. And then you're going to have archers with light armor, I believe, again over here. And then we're going to have an Eagle Claw bolt thrower. It's backed up by the Keepers of the Flame. We have a Silver Helm on the left flank and a Dragon Prince with a couple of chevrons on the right flank. And we check out the Vampires, who they're fighting up against. Here comes a Soul Quench, actually, with some really good damage against the Lahmian Vampire Lord. So not bad at all. So obviously the Vampires, as just mentioned, led by a Lahmian Lord. I'm going to slow things down here just for a minute so we can cover some of the, I think, key information here on the Lahmian Lord. So Seduction, which is basically a debuff to an enemy, hits all enemies in range, so basically a debuff ability that's quite good. And then a damage resistance ability for themselves in the opportunity that they need it. Magic resistance, which I don't think is going to be a huge deal, but we've got Penumbral Pendulum, Raising the Dead, and Invocation of the Heck. The Lahmian Lord is supported by a couple of Blood Knights, which I think is a good pick. Support the Lahmian Lord. We're going to see some zombies up front as chaff, including the Tithe zombies. 2 more zombies in the second row, supported by a Necromancer, who is just here to help pull down winds of magic. And honestly, this is a cheap way to improve the leadership of nearby units and get a lot of extra winds of magic, so I think that's a pretty good pick. I want to say this is like under 400 if you do it right. It's very, very cheap. We have the Sternsman Graveguard, and that is a very tough Graveguard unit that heals while it fights. We have a couple of Graveguard with great weapons, supported by a Corpse Cart with an Unholy Lodestone. And just a quick reminder for myself, because it's been a while, and for others, what the Unholy Lodestone does. Restores hit points of all allies in range. So it can be quite effective. You can essentially give these Graveguard a slight touch of what the Sternsmen have. We also have a Fluffy Puppy there in the back, otherwise known as a Vargulf, and some Fellbats up in the air. Let's hit back into play and watch this fight unfold. The Rangers ought to do very well against all of the zombie chaff, but I mean, how do you ever really pay back against zombie chaff? I don't think you can. And then as far as the archers go, they're going to need to be careful of the Fellbats and summons, and very much so for the Eagle Claw. It looks like we're going to see, yeah, the Tempest here used on the Fellbats. It's only 8 winds of magic if it wasn't overcast. If it was overcast, it's quite a bit more, but it's going to totally annihilate this unit of Fellbats, so I don't know. That might be a fair trade. Might be a fair trade, because now they can't interrupt the archers, and the other unit of Fellbats is basically having to fall back. We're going to have the Dragon Prince trying to intercept both Blood Knights, and very nice damage right off the bat here. There could have been some, I think there was some support fire from the artillery at first. We're going to see a Fiery Convocation here, which the Blood Knights are going to answer by 1 unit retreating, which that was very well done by the Vampire player to keep that unit out of harm's way. Lahmian Lord did some very nice support. There was an Apotheosis. Not going to be enough. And then look, their own Pendulum here from the Vampires rips a swath right through the Talons of Torquelada. So kind of a bit of a trade there in terms of the breath spells that came into play. And Tyrion is definitely going to be the bigger tank in this fight, though. But he needs support because he's now caught out by Blood Knights and a Lahmian Vampire Lord. So Tyrion not in a good place in life. The support of the Keepers of the Flame would be quite appropriate at the moment, but they are clearly trying to keep the artillery supported. Now we're going to get the Talons of Torquelada pouring fire in to help Tyrion. This will actually be very effective because Tyrion's got all these guys' backs turned, and here comes Sunfang on top of it, so he's going to char grill a whole bunch of Blood Knights nice grilled, coagulated blood. So we're going to get the Rangers engaging the zombies. No surprise here, the Rangers just absolutely shred zombies, where they run into these better infantry like the Graveguard with great weapons. It's not going to go well for the Rangers. They will get absolutely torn to pieces. Nice archer support at the moment, though, and it looks like it's going for the corpse cart with the Unholy Lodestone. That is indeed quite the appropriate target. We'll see a little bit of Silverhelm action here, trying to help against the Sternsmen. Silverhelms have a very nice charge bonus. And they will lay out some pretty solid damage here, though the zombies were giving a little bit of blocking here to the Sternsmen. The Sternsmen just aren't taking a ton of damage from the Rangers in the first place. So Rangers, like I said, they're going to clean up the zombie issue pretty quickly. You can see Tyrion has fought himself out of those Blood Knights with the support of his ranged units and done rather well. But we do still have the Lahmian Lord in pretty good health, running around back here, but taking shots. And the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower is still going to be alive. The High Elves are going to end up with some trouble here. The Vargulf and the Sternsmen, they are going to break through. And the Sternsmen are healing. They're going to continue to heal. Fortunately for the High Elves, though, not so fortunately for the Vampires, this corpse cart is in some pretty bad shape. However, it does leave these Silverhelms at least temporarily exposed to getting a little bit of counterattack against them, so they're going to have to pull out and find a better angle to get into this fight from. So, there they go. The Vargulf would be pretty susceptible to the talons of Torquelada, should they be able to get an extended period of time to fight. We're going to see a summon here, zombies coming up to try and help tie down Silverhelms. Tyrion is very much alone in this fight, again, though he is a pretty massive tank of a unit, so he will do fairly well. And he's got the Keepers of the Flame coming to assist him, which should be a very nice ally to have here. The Bats throw all in, but it's not enough to get rid of these units, and now I think the High Elves know that they have some advantage here, because their ranged units are going to be free to fire, unless the Vargulf peels off to try and get back there, which honestly wouldn't be a bad idea, as well as these Blood Knights. They're obviously trying to clear up the Silverhelms, and they managed to because of the Terrified that came in off the Vargulf, so very handy to have that terror. The Lahmian Vampire Lord still pretty alive here, and honestly, what's a pretty close battle still up to this point. But the Vampires have a big issue. This Keepers of the Flame, this is going to be a very tough unit for them to have to deal with. Keeping that corpse cart nearby, though, could make a huge difference. So the Vampires are going to want to try very hard to keep the corpse cart here. The Life Mage gets caught by some Blood Knights, so again, very bad deal here. And the Lahmian Lord and the Vargulf do indeed break free to get to the skirmishers, and they certainly need to. Those skirmishers will cause extensive damage. A couple of Rangers trying to hold on to dear life here against the undead. It is a rather close fight going on there. You see Sunfang coming in here again. So Tyrion using his magical abilities to add damage to this infantry fight, and that does hurt the Vampires pretty bad. The Graveguard and the Sternsmen here, which is also a Graveguard, are fighting very tough fight here against the Keepers of the Keepers of the Flame. Necromancers over here. So the Lodestone, though, the corpse cart is still here. It's definitely going to help out with healing the units that are nearby. So that's going to be a problem. And at this point, that the Vargulf cleaned up some of the archers. A few came back. The Lahmian Lord is headed back this way, though. Maybe going to try and overwhelm Tyrion. The Vargulf and the Lahmian Lord have a good opportunity to try and overwhelm Tyrion, but they'd have to leave the artillery there, which is also a big risk for him. The Keepers of the Flame are now in pretty good position. It says the Vampires kind of have the upper hand here, but I disagree with that assessment. I think the Keepers of the Flame going to be a very difficult unit to get rid of here. There are still a few infantry units who could help to do so, but with the Lahmian Lord getting pretty low here and the Vargulf not there to support, this becomes a very dangerous fight for the Lahmian Lord. Seduction is helping, though. Look at Tyrion's stats, despite the fact that Seduction's in play. Like, still an incredibly powerful unit. Here comes the Keepers of the Flame. Let's let you all see these really cool units. If I can get the camera to work right, here we go. Love the color scheme on these guys. Got like the map on their capes and stuff. Looks absolutely, or no, it's flames. I guess it looked kind of like a map. That'd be cool too. Yeah, they, despite being halberd units, Vampire Elite Infantry is just pretty subpar. Mostly because it doesn't lose its, it can't rout. but their stats are extremely subpar for an elite infantry, and so despite being a halberd unit and not being intended for an anti-infantry fight, the Keepers of the Flame will do very well here. It'll be a very close fight. Look at this, Tyrion gets caught kind of at the last second out here by Blood Knights. And the Blood Knight's going to suffer some of the same stuff here, where the Vargulf just cannot seem to get rid of all the units fast enough. He's crumbling now, too, because of loss of leadership. The Lahmian Lord now gone, the Vargulf is not feeling near as good about life. Sternsmen do a respectable job. The Keepers of the Flame have lost a lot of their health. Look at this Tyrion just out here tanking away. I mean, you do have a bonus versus large on Blood Knights. I think it's another Sunfang coming up here. Yep. Another Sunfang, so Tyrion able to tank it out, and what I think for the longest time there was a pretty close battle. I think if the vampires, and it's tough for them because they had to go for that artillery, the skirmishers, but at one point I think if they would have maybe abandoned it for a moment, they might have been able to come back and clobber Tyrion. Again, that's a big if, because he does get some healing sometimes at the last second. Makes it very difficult to KO him completely. The Vargulf is going to be weak to the attacks of Tyrion here. Not going to be what he wants. He doesn't actually have flaming attacks, which is odd because he carries a flaming sword, but Sunfang is technically a flaming attack. The Sternsman here putting out a last effort, along with the corpse cart against the Keepers of the Flame. You can see that the Vargulf is like, yeah, I want to get closer to that corpse cart. Indeed, it should want to. Sternsman putting up an impressive fight, as one might imagine. The Vargulf just caught by Tyrion, can't get away from him. Tyrion's going to lay waste to it. The Vargulf puts out nice damage, but you'd need a couple of them to have any hope really against Tyrion here. So a very nice close fight here in between the vampires and the High Elves. You all can leave your thoughts on what went right or wrong here for the players. I thought there were some good and bad moves by both, but a very close fight here. Like I said, I really enjoyed this one. Appreciate Hayden's phone sending it in. Appreciate him being a supporter over on the Discord and part of the community and sending me replays, so definitely appreciate him. And then Hanem here for playing a really fun battle. Really fun one. Take a look at some of the stats. Tyrion, of course, racking up some value, as one might expect. Tons of kills on the Rangers, but again, when you go look at the value, not great, because it's zombies. I don't know any units that typically do turn out to be very valuable against zombies, because zombies just don't provide a lot of value. Keepers of the Flame were on a good trajectory. They could have provided even more value had the battle not ended, so they were also doing well. And then look at the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower here for a unit that only costs about 700. Getting 2810 damage value out of it is pretty obscene and very good for the High Elves. The Lahmian Lord, not a ton of damage value, but it was doing a lot of support and attacking skirmishers and stuff, so I wouldn't let the value there fool you. The Vargulf did pretty well here. The Sternsmen did pretty well. About as good as they could. I guess for the Graveguard with great weapons, these are just not very impressive units to begin with. Look at the performance here, though, on this Blood Knight, taking home the VIP for most damage done by any unit here at 4987. That is a fantastic performance from the Blood Knight there from Hanem, so very nicely done with that. Like I said, hope you all enjoyed this one. I'll have some more battles for you soon. Some of the ones that I played on my stream, got some FFA stuff coming up, and I hope you all enjoy it. HeirofCarthage signing out for now. I will see you then.